Hi there all, it's that time of year again, and not Christmas, though that is just around the bend. I, however, referring to the end of yet another long, protracted Clan Wars campaign.
And there was much rejoicing.
But no, hopefully you all had good fun out of it. Others, especially callers and anyone who's having to do all these bloody chip movements to make it so that everyone's at the right place, is probably to the contrary. But, jesting aside, this is the time we all get to sit back and relax and mull over which Clan Wars tank, as you probably noticed, you're going to pick. And what I wanted to do is come here to talk with all of you about all the respective tanks that you have to choose from. Now, to my knowledge, there wasn't any single place that he wanted to put these up or talk them in the way that I cared to present in a more objective manner, alongside taking these stats as we will be looking at in Tanks GG for all of these vehicles: the 95E6, the M60, the 7201, the 907, and the as of yet unreleased WZ121B. Taking those stats as I said and showing you how they will perform, not within a replay, because unfortunately, due to the aforementioned campaign, I simply didn't have the time to go in and run these vehicles during it. But what I have done is, thanks to Beathead and Bullet, two very good friends of mine, we went into a training room, and I will show you how they will perform against the respective vehicles that we will be comparing them to in Tanks GG. So, as I said, you can look at the stats, and then immediately afterwards we will transition in, and you can see genuinely how these stats reflect in the vehicle's performance, so you can get a better feeling of how these tanks will play compared to the counterparts, the 907, first of which compared to the 140, and get a better idea of, it's not just merely me coming here saying, oh, the 907 plays exactly the same as the 140. Well, that's all well and good, but you most likely want to know, mobility wise, is it going to be able to turn as quickly? Is it going to have better armor? And in practice, which is another thing we'll be having to look at, is firing at these positions on the vehicles, and if it's better, if the armor layout's different, where the weak spots will be. For instance, on the 7201, there is a weak spot on the front of it, which a lot of people don't know about, so we'll be going over these things as well. So overall, you get a sense of what the stats are, how they compare to perhaps tanks that you played, and how you can combat these vehicles if you unfortunately don't already have them, or let's say you're picking one of the 5 potential tanks, and that way you can better use whatever one you do choose against the invariable swarm of these things you will see in pub matches. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and transition over to Tanks GG and start looking at the hard stats on all of these vehicles, and then getting into the videos as I mentioned immediately afterwards. So, transition time. Okay, now for this first, portion of the Tanks GG bits that we're going to be looking at. I want to state that these will be briefly going over the stats, just enough to where you can get a general idea of how these things will perform against some of their respective infantry counterparts, so you get a better idea how they will perform compared to tanks that you potentially have or have played. Now the stats, as I said, we're going to briefly go over. The biggest thing for me are the armor models, because the stats on the armor are a bit misleading, especially for the 97 and the 7201. So, getting right into things, 97 comparing it to the 140 and the 430. I believe it is a good mix between these two, and I believe you'll find the stats exemplified this. Out the gate, very good DPM, right on par with the 140 and 430. Matter of fact, right in between the two. You've got a 0.1 second better reload than 140. It's not enough to make it noticeably more powerful than the 140, but it's icing on the proverbial cake. Now the weapon handling, this is a make or break stat for most people, myself included. You have a better aim time, mitigating your slightly worse dispersion than the 140. Now a lot of you will say, well, that's a fair bit worse than the 140. Now this is true in part, but to put things into perspective, a irksome tank for me, the STB-1 has 0.16 dispersion on turret and hull traverse. Now that places the 907 right in between the 140 and the STB. So it's still just enough to where it's not bothersome, and it's very good. You're going to be shooting things on the move just like you would with any other Russian medium. You are back to 5 degrees gun depression though, but this is par for the course for most Russian mediums. The 140 is nice, it's got a degree more, but that degree will neither make or break this tank. It will still perform near identical to the 140 in nearly every circumstance. Now on to movement, same top speed as the 140 and 430 at 55, but with the added bonus of having a better power to weight ratio, which means over long distances uphill, Kampanovka for example, you will get up top the hill just a second or two quicker, which can make all the difference. Now granted, this is a single case, flat surfaces downhill, no difference at all. Terrain resistance still very good. All Russian mediums have good terrain resistance, slightly more than the 140, but it's still exceptional. Better turret traverse, 9 degrees more, but 42 degrees roughly on the 140 is still enough to where you're tracked, and a medium's going round you, you're still going to have your turret on the target. So it's nice, but not necessarily needed at 50. Now, the HP and the armor. First off, 100 more hit points. That's always nice. If RNG starts screwing with you, you've got a bit more leeway when it comes to saving throws or the enemy high rolling you versus the 140, which is nice. But the biggest thing I wanted to stress, looking at the stats on the vehicle, that 228mm is a bit misleading when compared to the 140, and I will show you exactly why. Now you've got 100mm front armor, slightly more than the 140 on the sides, less on the jack seat. It's a Russian Meditate, and if it's angled enough to where you're going to be bouncing off the hull, you're probably going to be aiming at the sides anyway. Now, view range 400, standard fare, it's good. Camo coefficients are a bit wonky in Tanks GG at the moment, I don't know why, but I do believe, and you can check this in the garage by yourself, via comparison, the camo coefficient between the Russian meds, there are slight variances, but not enough to make anyone much more notable at range versus another. There may be a 1 or 2 meter discrepancy on when you're going to be detected. Fire chance, negligible. It's still sub 15. It's good. The supplies to the engine, if I recall, and you're going to be caught alight by being shot in the gas tanks on these Russian mediums anyway. Now look at the armor model. First, the 140. It has a better turret on paper. There are two key differences here. One, the 140 has a weak spot next to the gun and on the base, which is 260 to 250 mil thick. It's slightly small, but on the 907, it is even slighter and thicker than it is, except for the very base, than the 140. So it's got roughly the same weak spot next to the gun towards the base, but it's ever so slightly thicker than the 140. That's nice. But the biggest buff to this thing's turret armor, and we'll go to the hybrid model for this, is the cupola on it. And you will see this in the footage right after Tanks GG when we go into the trading room. It's 220 mil thick. At any angle but the base, you will bounce. And even then at the base of it, this is 230 to 240 mil thick. And that's at the very base. The 140, you don't have this. It's 160 mil thick, and even out towards the sides, it's 250, which is what the base is on the 907. You will pen the command hatches on this. Now the other thing, going back to the visual model, you see this top knot, where that weld is, where it goes round the cupolas. That is only 30 mil thick. And I will state this again in the trading room. What this means is, according to the current armor model, and the 907 has the exact same issue, you will overmatch this with a 90 mil gun with the existing mechanics in the game. And that can be a big problem, but at least on the 907, if they miss this and they hit the cupola instead, you've got a big leg up versus the 140 with regards to your turret armor, which is very, very nice to have. Which is, from my time running the tank, it makes me enjoy the 907 just that much more. Now, bearing all these stats in mind, let's go see how they translate into a given match, or rather a trading room in this case. So without further ado, let's have a look at that. Okay, now let's get a look at that hull traverse in comparison to the 140. Bit of a difference in when we start turning, but as you see, we end in the same position, and the 140 gets there in the exact same amount of time. 97 and 140, same hull traverse. Now as we get in position to start going down so you can see acceleration, there's going to be a bit of a hiccup again, but you will notice that the mobility is still essentially the same between these two tanks, and since we don't have an exact incline, it's still noticeably the same between the two. And I just want to do this so you all get a genuine feel that over short distance or medium distance they perform the same. And dear lord, the camera went wonky and Bullet dumped himself. I forgot about that. No, it won't give me the camera back. I'm going to transition into the next one we start shooting each other. As you can tell, I'm not the most acquainted with the camera yet, so let's pop to that scene. So, here we are, looking as we get into position. Me and the 97, shooting Bullet in the 140, and vice versa. Aiming at right on that roof of the turret. As I had mentioned, that is 30 mil thick. You will overmatch with a 90 mil gun, which all tier 10 mediums have, if not a larger caliber. And nearly all, if not all, tier 10 tanks will have a gun that can overmatch that. This is the weak spot you want to be shooting at on a hold down 907, or coincidentally the 140 as well. Now, aiming at Bullet's command hatch, as you can see, easily penning through. he reciprocates and bounces off. As I had mentioned, it is rather hard to pen the roof of the the cupola on the 97's turret, which is so lovely of a thing to have versus the 140. It doesn't make the 140 garbage, but it's just one of those niceties that you get with a 97 in comparison to the 140. He, of course, this time hitting the very base. As you recalled, as I'd mentioned, if you hit along the base, it's only 232mm thick. You can actually pen, but if it's anything but, it's lol, you just bounced off of me. Okay, now going into the first person view. I'm speeding things back up a mite. Just to show the whole armor. Honestly, from this angle, you will bounce off, but you're probably going to be aimed at the track to do damage and hit the ammo rack anyway. Now, aiming at the base of the turret, I want to show that weak spot I mentioned in Tanks GG. Loading up heat, right next to the gun. If Bill would move his out of the way, bump it. You will go through, and since, as I had mentioned, it's a bit harder to pen on the 907, bullet bounced off with a heat shell, which we both fired. Actually, let's go into that third-person camera so we get a better look again. And right next to the gun, he was a bit high, and there you go. See, he hit a bit closer to the base and got a bit better of a roll and penned through. But you will get bounces at times, and the 140 will not. We penned through both we aimed at. Now, from here on in, we just are going to be shooting each other, but I wanted to take this time to state that these videos are a bit longer than I thought they would be. So, whilst we slaughter one another, these are going to be about 15 minutes a pop, perhaps 20. Now, I will be passing these up. Originally I wanted it to be one full video, but I will have them all within a playlist, so you can see them as I wanted all in one place. It's just that I will segment them, not just to make them shorter, but I'd imagine a lot of people, they won't necessarily care about the WZs or the 7201, and they just want to focus on the respective tank that they have their eyes on and want to see compared to, as I had to in Tech Tree counterparts. So I figure for both me uploading and for everyone watching, that'll be the better bet. And on that note, I've been Starshield. I hope you all found this informative, if not entertaining as always, and I will catch you in the next video. So, till then.